morning. Thank you for joining the Community Resource Center for our podcast number 4 on water safety. Considering that it's Water Safety Month this month, we wanted to highlight the water safety in the program that we're doing. So here we have with us this morning, we have Aileen Bucciero from Swim Tank. Swim Tank has locations in West Harrison and Mamaroneck. Aileen has over 32 years of experience in teaching children how to swim, and she's spent 23 years growing the programs at Swim Tank. Her commitment to water safety awareness inspires her to not only educate through her swim schools, but also advocate for access to water safety for all children. In 2020, Swim Tank became one of the founding members of the New York Water Safety Coalition, where they work to pass legislation that raises awareness in drowning risks and promotes access to water safety education for all children in New York. So Aileen also worked on, and we'll have you talk about this a little bit later, but the newborn hospital video bill, which requires all hospitals to offer new parents to view the video of water safety and the dangers of drowning. And I remember having to do that before leaving with my children. And then also the public awareness bill, which amends the public health law to educate the public of dangers on drowning and highlights the unique risks for various age groups and disadvantaged communities. And then we have Karina Lehan from Carver Center. And Karina brings over a decade of experience in youth development and programs across Westchester County. You've led a variety of initiatives, including after-school programs, summer programs, and support services. Karina is currently the Director of Youth and Family Programs at the Portchester Carver Center and oversees the teen programs and all sorts of programming there. Karina holds certificates in response to intervention and is a New York State teaching assistant.
Yeah, I have that certificate, yes.
That's great. So we're lucky to have you both with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to do a special thank you also to LMC for hosting us all and having us to talk about the importance of water safety. So Community Resource Center started a swim program with the both of you, enrolling. So far we have over 80 children enrolled. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's around 80 children.
With 100 on a wait list, right? For, like, the interest is just, there's an abundance of interest for the life skill of water safety. So Community Resource Center had come across a grant that we went for through the Long Island Sound Community Impact Fund, which is called LISCAF, and they are part of Restore American Estuaries, who are dedicated to protecting and restoring the bays and estuaries in our nation. Specifically for Long Island Sound, they bring education of waterways to the area. So we, living in a floodplain, thought, what better way than to get people the life skill of swimming, especially, you know, after the Hurricane Ida and everything that everybody faced. So we're going to start by asking you guys some questions on swim safety.
Exciting.
So I'm going to start with Aileen. So why is Water Safety Month so important, and what are the key messages that you want to highlight?
You know, Water Safety Month is important, and it's a great opportunity to get awareness out to people, highlighting an entire month that way. But water safety should be considered every month. And it's so important. You know, people just don't realize. I mean, most people that I talk to, even up in Albany, when we're trying to fight for these bills and advocate for access to swimming lessons for more people, we go around and talk to the congressmen and women and the assemblymen and women, and we say, do you know what the number one risk to children is? It's drowning. And they have no idea. The number one cause of death for all children ages 1 to 5 is drowning. It's not car accidents. It's not crossing the street. It's not, BPA in your bottles. It's not
Right.
fire. It's not any of those things. Yet we continue to focus on all of those things primarily. Kids will get fire prevention in school. They'll get bus safety. They'll get all of these things, drug prevention, even as they get older. But nobody talks about water safety. There's not one program that's
Right.
in public schools that has to teach children about water safety. And this is the number one thing killing our children. It's the second leading cause of death for all children ages 5 to 14. So it doesn't even end just in the 1 to 5 category. It just slightly diminishes below car accidents, So it's really amazing to get a month to promote things like this and get the information out there. But there's so much more to be done. We're excited that New York State is taking this very seriously. We're the first state to pass the newborn hospital video bill, which is amazing. And there's several other states who are following, trying to pass it in their state. And shortly, we did get another law passed, which is public awareness. So the Department of Health now has to put out information about drowning and about water safety. Those of us who are old enough remember that ad that came on TV, it's 10 p.m., do you know where your children are? Or, this is drugs, this is your brain on drugs.
Right.
We need a PSA like that. We need commercials. We need this in people's faces so that we can raise awareness so people know. Education is what is going to prevent this from happening. Drowning is preventable. It is 100% preventable. But you have to be educated. You have to know what to do. You have to know the signs and the risks. And if you don't know that, you can't do anything about it. The parents that I have talked to have lost a child to drowning. They just never thought it could happen to them. They never thought, I always have my kid in my sight, and I always know where they are. But we've all had that moment as parents when you're in the house with your kid, and you're like, wait, where'd they go?
And there's such a draw to play with water.
Yes,
Like,
it's so enticing.
Like they're just drawn to the water.
It's so
whatever
Kids
it
at that
is.
age aren't scared of anything.
And it happens so quickly.
So quickly.
Yes.
It takes a child 20 to 30 seconds to drown. Like, this is not something that takes 10 minutes, And it can happen, it happens mostly for young children. Happens in the bathroom, right? Like you leave
Right.
your child alone in the tub for 10 seconds to go grab a towel or to answer the phone, or you left a pot on and you hear it overflowing, and it's so 20 seconds. It's 20 seconds. You walk to your kitchen, you come back, like that tub seat could flip over, anything can happen.
Right.
Toilets, you have to lock toilets. You want to make sure that there's a safety lock on toilets. Kids get curious, they reach in, they fall in head first. You're not going to hear it. Drowning is also silent. And that's what a lot of people don't know.
That's
they
the
don't
misconception.
scream.
Everybody thinks that you're going
Yeah.
to stream and flail your hands.
I mean,
and-
the arms go up and down, but they're silent because they just come up, gasp for air, and go right back down. So, you often don't even know. It can look like playing sometimes. So, the scariest thing that I've seen and heard from parents who are even at a pool with their kid, your kid can get tired even if they can swim, right? So supervision is huge. Watching, assigning someone to watch. If you're going to a public pool and you go with your husband and even with your sister or with friends, right? Everybody thinks somebody's watching the pool, but nobody's assigned to watch that pool.
Right.
So it's so important that you pick someone, okay, you're in charge the next half hour, you're watching the pool, and then I'll take the shift after that. And you don't get to talk to friends during that
Right.
half hour. You're watching the pool. And if your kids can't swim, you need to be in the pool with them. Sometimes they throw those life jackets on or floaties or whatever. That's not a replacement for a human being being in the water. Other kids can push them under. Those things can fall off, So there's just a lot of dangers. So it's great to have a month to really highlight all of this, and education is huge. There's 5 evidence-based things that can help prevent drowning, and they are barriers around a pool, right? So if you live in a neighborhood, if you have a neighbor who has a pool above ground, the ladder's supposed to be locked or it's supposed to be taken off the pool. If they have an in-ground pool, it's supposed to be fenced all around with self-closing, latching gates. And if you have your own pool, put alarms on it. Put alarms on your house if you can, right? So that if a door opens, your toddler snuck out of the house, right?
Right.
And you want to make sure that, you lock doors and, but these are things as parents, like, you're 14-year-old could walk out and unlock the door, and
Right,
you don't know that
right.
it's been
And
unlocked,
maybe-
right?
right.
Parents have to be aware that none of us are perfect, right?
Yeah.
And so drowning happens because we're just not aware. We're just not always thinking that this is the number one risk. If we can get that into people's minds, then they're always going to be thinking, what's the water risk around here?
Right.
I'm going to look around
And this is
find
such a
it.
community, like even if you don't have a pool, we're surrounded
Yeah.
by water
We're
with the
surrounded.
rivers
Yes. Yeah.
and the Long Island Sound and the boating, and like there's just such access to water in this
Yeah.
community.
And teenagers drown in open water. That's where they drown.
Yeah.
They see a pond. They take 2 steps in. Then all of a sudden, the
It
floor
drops off.
Yes.
They don't know that. And then all of a sudden, where they think they're just splashing and cooling off, they're in danger, right? They're
Right.
in the ocean. They're waist high. A big wave comes, and they get knocked
Dragged
over, and then they don't know what to do. Or a riptide happens, you know? So there's a lot. But the 5 evidence-based, which I should get back to, is the barriers and alarms. You want to make sure everybody knows CPR. CPR can make all the difference. If you do rescue a child from the water or an adult,
Yeah.
starting CPR right away is what could really save their lives. So no CPR. There's almost every community has free CPR classes. So find one, educate yourself, and learn CPR. Supervision, which we talked about, assign a water watcher. Make sure there's somebody always in charge of that pool, because it takes 2 seconds for somebody to start panicking and for something to happen. You want to make sure that if you are by an ocean or open water, that you are using a life jacket. Really, kids who can't swim, who are in an ocean that has waves, should have a life jacket on.
And there's special certified life jackets,
Coast Guard
right?
certified
Coast
life
Guard
jacket.
certified,
That's what you
it's
want,
called.
Coast
Right.
Guard certified.
Right.
And those are created so that no matter how you fall into the water, it flips you on your back the way it makes you float, so that you're floating head up. Right? So a lot of those vests that people use for swimming or armbands, those are not going to prevent you from floating face down in the water. Those, the only one that will is the Coast Guard certified life jacket. So make sure you use one of those. And then the biggest evidence-based thing you can do is give your kids swimming lessons. Swimming lessons have been shown to reduce the risk of drowning by 88%. Wow. That's a huge number.
Huge.
But we need
And just basic skills. You don't have to be an
right.
Olympic swimmer.
You do not have to be able to do the butterfly. You need to be able to fall in a pool, turn around and get the wall, fall in a pool, float on your back, and you need the basic skills of getting from point A to point B. And we need to give this basic human right to everyone.
Right.
It needs to be accessible to everyone. And so that's our long-term mission and goal.
We agree. We agree.
What are the most important skills every beginner swimmer should learn first?
So for us at Carver Center, we really try to focus on breathing, floating, and kicking. So breathing, making sure that our kids are able to blow bubbles in the water, calm themselves down as they're swimming, make sure that they can exhale under the water and make them feel calm and in control of the situation. Floating, as Aileen had said earlier, just making sure that you can get on your back when you're tired and be able to make it out of the pool, get to the side when you can, get from point A to point B. Kicking is like where the fun starts. The kids get to start to learn how to kick. They're having fun now in the water. So breathing, floating, kicking, I would say, are the most important skills to actually learn when you're learning to swim.
At what age should children start swimming lessons, and what should parents look for in a good program?
In our opinion, children can learn to swim as early as 6 months. They have parent and me classes, parent and child classes now that start as early as 6 months. At Carver Center, we have programs that start at 4 years old. We're actually looking to introduce parent and me classes soon. That's a goal that we have. And when it comes to choosing a really good swim program, you want to make sure that you have a program that has people who are WSI certified, so water safety instructor certified. Personally, all of our staff are Red Cross certified and WSI certified. And you want to make sure that you go to a program that has a small ratio between students or youth and instructor. make sure that it's somewhere that your child is going to feel like they can speak to their instructor. So a lot of our instructors, we come from a very huge bilingual population or Spanish-speaking population. So our instructors are mostly bilingual so that they can communicate not only with the child but with the parent as well as as to their progress and how they're working. The other thing is you want to make sure that you know what kind of curriculum that the school is following. So we personally follow the Red Cross curriculum.
Yeah, so New York State has a law that you shouldn't be giving swimming lessons without a lifeguard present. So that's a huge thing because a lot of states don't have that. So it's really important that there is a lifeguard present. You know, we're all local pools around here have to answer to the Department of Health, and they come in and check and make sure you have certified lifeguards to be on deck in case of an emergency. So, for example, one of the other trainings that you can get is WSI. American Red Cross does provide that, but you don't have to be a lifeguard to have your WSI.
Yes.
So one of the things you do want to make sure is that there's a lifeguard present. Now, if there isn't in Westchester County, they're doing something wrong, they're breaking the rules. But there's backyard pools, and there's private people who do lessons in backyard pools. And we've seen some of that in the news over the past few years where you have a person in a backyard pool and there's no lifeguard present, and maybe they have too many kids in the pool, and maybe the parents aren't allowed to watch for some reason. I believe parents should always be able to watch their kids' lessons from a, it doesn't have to be right behind them because that can sometimes interfere with the lesson, but from a safe space where they can see what's going on. We always have lifeguards on deck. And every program will have their own set of certifications. So like your local Y, while they may not have WSI, they do an extensive training program. My program, for example, we have our own training program. And so, our instructors go through hundreds of hours of training, and ratios are huge.
Yes.
Sometimes putting 5, 6, 7 kids into a beginner class isn't really going to give you what you need in a 30-minute class once a week. So the lower the ratios you can get, the better that it is. Of course, that comes along with affordability, right? So, you have to balance the two. Any exposure is good exposure as long as it's safe and, that there is lifeguards on duty watching. We also agreed that the younger the better. To be honest, our benchmark is, can the child hold their head up well? Because when you're holding them in the water, you want to make sure that they can have their head holding up. So that happens anywhere around 4 to 6 months. And the younger you expose your child to the water, you get rid of those fears, right?
Yes.
So as your child turns 2, they start to become afraid, right? And you'll notice that stranger anxiety can start, and, they're like, am I afraid to go somewhere on their own? They kind of stick to mom. You're seeing all that. That happens with the water, too. Sometimes they start, saying, I don't want to go into the water. I don't want to have that exposure. So, and it can be new, as parents, sometimes we're washing their hair in the bathtub and we're like, oh, I don't want to get any soap in their eyes or water in their eyes. But the best thing you can do is before you soap that hair, pour the water right over their head. You're going to desensitize them from birth, right? They've been in the womb inside water the whole time. So this is nothing new for them, but it is different in the outside world where they're warm and cozy. You want to make bath time fun and pleasurable, sing songs, have fun toys, but get that water going over their face from day one, because that'll make your transition into water adjustment so much easier, right? We have kids, they used to have years ago, they came out with visors for washing hair.
Right. I remember those.
Put the goggles on. Don't do any of that. Start getting them used to it. And, if your child has some sensitivities, which many children do, start with a washcloth on their face and make it gentler and work your way up. But really getting them started younger is better. Once they can walk, their risk of drowning increases, right? So if you can start getting them in, and a good swim program will not just be skills, but it'll be rules, right?
Yes.
So at our swim program, you're not allowed to get in until the teacher says go. And we test that theory, right? So you're sitting on the side of the wall, and we're like, don't get in, wait, right? And you also don't want to overuse flotation devices. We use them as a tool to teach swimming, but you don't want to overuse them. You shouldn't have a kid in a swimming lesson with a float on the whole time.
They just become dependent upon it.
Exactly.
They become dependent, and they also are not aware then. They think every time I get in a pool, I float.
Floaties,
I come up. I'm safe. So if you never take that off and have them jump in a pool and go under, they have no idea that, oh, this is what this feels like. I went under.
I had an incident like that when my kids were little. My oldest daughter took exactly what you're talking about, like that floaty that has like the arms and goes around the chest and you clip in the back.
Yep.
And 2 seconds we weren't paying attention. My oldest daughter, she must have been 5 at the time, took it off my 2-year-old, unbuckled it, and like when we turned around, she was under.
She was under.
So scary.
And she got in that pool because she was so confident.
Yep.
Right? So they're great for
And
parents.
with her
'cause
sisters and like all ready to go.
Yeah. And so you have to marry that, right? Like you want to let them have some freedom and let them have fun and know that the water is fun. But half, if not more than half of your time should be, okay, we don't have it on now. This is what it feels like in a good way.
Right.
But you have to feel like you're going under. You know, and even simple things like every time your child jumps in the pool, don't catch them. Teach them to go back to the wall, right? You want that to be instinctive. If you fall in a pool,
Get to the
phew,
wall.
I'm going right back to the wall.
Yes.
Yeah,
So even
just a
with the
natural
floaty
instinct.
on, if you said jump in and go to the wall, jump in and go to the wall, not jump in and go to mom and I rescue you and take you to the wall.
Right, because if mom's not there when you go
What do you
in.
do? Yes.
Exactly. So, you know, that's really important. And then talk to your kids, right? A 2-year-old, you don't have your float on. Don't get in. Don't get in and watch them. They're probably going to get in, but then let them go under.
Because they test boundaries,
They
right? Like
test
that's what a
boundaries.
2-year-old
Right.
is.
So let them go under. You're right there. Pull them back up, put their hands on the wall and say, you didn't wait for go. Wait. So we do a lot of that in our program because we want the kids to know you need permission to get in the pool. You need permission to go in the water. That's a huge safety component, along with the floating and getting back to that wall, which are the 2 biggest things that you can really teach them instinctively to remember. Floating's hard for kids. If you start it young, it tends to be easier, but you get a 5-year-old who's never been in the pool, and now you want them to
go
lean back
Do-
and get water in their ears.
Really silly
It's-
question for you guys, though. Do people naturally float or no?
So you will naturally float, but every body has their own buoyancy point, right? So adults and
Depending upon
women,
what you ate and
we
everything,
tend
too?
to float really easily, women. The more body fat you have, the easier you float, believe it or not. It's the opposite. It's the skinny little kids who have to work twice as hard. They're not as buoyant.
Right.
But sometimes you have to bend your knees to compensate with the body. The head position's huge. If you're looking at your feet when you're floating, your
mouth is
body's
gonna
going
be
to
under.
sink, your
Yeah.
legs are going to sink, and then you're going to sink, right? But if you extend your neck backwards and you look up, you're more likely to float. So it's finding your own individual balance. But yeah, everybody can float. Yeah. But you have to calm down too, right?
Yes.
So if you're
Right,
panicked, and you're
panicking,
tense,
you're not
If you're
relaxed,
stressed
yes.
and
yeah,
becoming-
it's much harder. But yeah, so that's really important.
Completely makes sense. So, in terms of adults, do you guys have any pointers? So, what we've learned is one of the reasons we went for this swim grant was because we realized that so many adults in the community cannot swim. So, our thought was that that also affects their children and them not wanting to, their fear, put on their children of not wanting to get in the water. So how do you conquer that with adults in general?
Well, you're 100% right. There is generational fear and generational not learning to swim. And a lot of that has to do with just the parent that never had lessons, never had exposure to a pool, never got in, and then they had a child, same thing happened, and same thing happened, right? So much of this has to do with access and availability.
Yes.
And the Black and brown community drowns at a much higher rate than the white community because they haven't had access for generations to pools and to swimming lessons. So at Swim Tank, we don't teach adults because we are overrun with children and trying to get them. And it is a completely different thing. I have taught a couple of adults in my lifetime, but it's so psychological, right?
sure.
So kids can be talked into a lot. And adults like, I don't think so.
They're not going for the
But
piece of
it's-
candy for going
Right,
under.
exactly. Like, you'll get a prize.
Yeah.
The adult's like, I don't know, I think I'm going to drown. So adults are a whole other animal, and you may be able to speak to it
yes.
more, but it's never too late to swim, I'll tell you that.
Right.
Definitely not. So we actually do offer adult swim lessons, and we have one class right now a week, and we have a lot of interest, but like Aileen said, it's hard for a parent, an adult, to stay in the class. Usually what we've seen is they've had like a traumatic event as a child, and then it's kind of like a straight from them, like, I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I drowned as a kid. Like, I couldn't make it. So it's more of a psychological thing, as you said, gaining trust, starting them off in the shallow end, making sure that they know, like, hey, we've got the 2 lifeguards here. We've got our swim instructor. We've got a swim aid for you. Like, getting that rapport with them and just getting them started, I think,
Right,
is the
just a
best thing.
comfort
Just
level
getting
in the
comfortable
water.
in the water.
Right.
And then as they get comfortable, then you're able to bring the child in. You know, we have family swim as well, where it's an open kind of concept where if you you feel like you're not ready for lessons yet, but you want to join your child in the water and your child's already in lessons, or if you just want to bring your family to get comfortable in the water, that's our biggest thing, is just getting comfortable stepping into the water and
Right.
making it slowly, maybe up to like 5 feet, and feeling comfortable getting there. I know a ton of people who won't even get near the pool. They won't pass the
Right.
shallow end. So
Right.
it's really building that rapport and gaining that trust with the individual, and then building from there.
Scary.
And we have some adults registered in Carver Center.
Yes.
Which is
Thank you.
great.
That's fantastic.
Which is great.
Yeah.
We've been
Yeah.
pushing it. I mean, we
Yes.
really pushed it out for kids, but we have been
Yeah.
trying to get more adults just to be comfortable,
Well, that's how
Yeah.
you spread the awareness, right?
right? And just change that trajectory of the generation.
There was a
Exactly.
recent poll done last year in New York State. Actually, it might have been in just the United States, but it was shocking. 50% of adults said they did not know how to swim. 50%. That's
Yeah.
That is
you
a
would
shocking
not
number.
think that that was that high of a number, but
crazy.
50%.
We actually have our aquatics program is integrated in a couple of our other programs. For example, we have a teen center program that I oversee, that's for youth ages 13 all the way up until 21, and then we also work with our emerging young adults, which is 18 to 24. And we've actually incorporated where our kids can have pool parties, and they have like a discounted rate for lessons and things like that. And the pool parties is, yes, it's fun, but it's, again, a way to get them comfortable getting in the water. Now they're with their friends. You know, we've got all these lifeguards. We've got the swim instructors there. So if they're feeling comfortable just getting in the water and not being afraid, and same thing with our summer camp, we're giving them access, like you said before, just making sure that it's available and open to them, so
Right.
that when they do decide, oh, hey, you know, like, I feel comfortable in the water, a couple of friends and me, let's join lessons, let's do this together. It's way easier. It's kind of like when you try and get yourself to go to the gym and you want to go consistently.
Right.
Yeah,
You need
get
that
right.
accountability
friends
buddy.
to go with
Yes.
you, yeah.
Well, it does become a social thing, because then you can go to the beach,
Yeah.
or you're
Very
hanging out at
social,
somebody's
yeah.
pool, or
Yeah. There's so much water activity, especially in New York, you know.
Yes.
Right.
It's just constant. But yeah, and education of the dangers of water is the other piece of this. You know, we're battling now for a new bill that we're trying to get passed called Every Child a Swimmer. And it's modeled after a program that started in Florida, where basically when you register for kindergarten, they will ask you, does your child know how to swim? Have they had lessons? And if they haven't, then they'll give you information on the fact that they should know how to swim and that it prevents drowning risk by 80%. And here's all the local swim schools in your area that can help you. Here's the voucher program that you
That's
can use.
amazing.
Here's the grants that you can apply for.
wonderful.
And give you all that information. And then past that, you know, we'd love to get the Department of Education to incorporate water safety into the curriculum. And we've been told bills go to the Department of Education to die. So we'll see how it goes. But the Every Child a Swimmer should be easy enough, because it doesn't require the school to do much. It doesn't require them to change their curriculum.
Right.
What we'd love to see is a bill passed that changes the curriculum for physical education. Put it in there. The health and safety classes, put it in there, right? They're going to teach your kid about sex and drugs and bullying and, you know, kindness and all these other things. But the second biggest
right.
risk to those, you know, 5 to 15-year-olds is drowning, right? So why not give them some information like, there's riptides in an ocean. Don't go in if you don't know how to swim. start at your local pool.
Yes.
Like, take that step so that you can enjoy these things, but learn how to swim before you go into open water,
I feel
because
like that's
that's
a-
where you're going to drown.
Yeah, because that's a false sense of security because you can walk into it
walk.
gradually is
Yeah.
what people
Yes, and then
think,
you
whereas a pool,
go
they
down.
think
You
they're
can
just
run back
jumping
out.
in.
Yeah.
But you
and
get caught in the
Yeah.
current, like it's pools don't have
Yeah.
currents.
No.
pools do not
I
have
was
currents.
actually going to say, I personally went to New Rochelle High School, and at New Rochelle High School, you
They
have
have
to
a
take
pool,
swim.
yes.
You have to.
Fantastic
There's no way
there.
you get out of it.
That's right.
Every once a year, I believe it was a quarter,
Yeah.
and you have to take swimming from the basics, from like learning to get in the water, blowing the bubbles, putting
Yeah.
your face in, using the kickboard, using the flippers.
And
yeah, I
public
remember.
schools used to have pools, but it became
Yes.
too expensive. It all
Right.
became a money
Right.
thing. And
Right.
even if you look at a lot of the pools in the last 5 years, they get so old. They were put in, how many years ago, and they don't want to spend it. So they knock them down and put sprinkler parks in.
Yeah.
Because that cheaply solves the
Replace-
cooling down
play.
need
Yeah.
and water play without the need for lifeguards and expensive equipment and breakdowns. But it's something that needs to be invested
Exactly.
in, especially when you know that it's taking away, children and adults,
Right.
from
Yes.
all
Right.
across America,
And especially, like, I'm just thinking about how they'll test your kid for so many things in school, like speech or hearing, or it's not going to kill you if you can't speak correctly or hear properly.
Right. Even the dentist, they want to know if you went to the dentist when
Right,
you go into
right.
kindergarten.
It's
Have
funny,
you seen
yes.
the
That's right.
dentist? Right. They check your eyes.
Right.
They do everything, but they don't even ask about it. So, we're on an upswing, which is exciting. New York State's taking this seriously, which is great. New York is one of the higher rates of drowning. It's about third or fourth, I think, in the country. We have so much access to water in New York
Right,
State. So open bodies of water are a big one. So, we got to keep fighting the fight, and education and awareness are the way to do
Absolutely.
it,
And do you offer specialized programs for individuals with disabilities or special needs or people who are afraid of the water?
So at this time, we don't offer specialized programs or anything like that, but we do have swim aids. So if you come to register your child with us and you let us know they have a disability or they have a fear of water, we assign a swim aid to that lesson as well, so that you have an extra person besides the instructor helping with the lesson and giving more of like a one-on-one attention. I actually got to experience this yesterday at one of our lessons. I was down there just checking in on everything, and we had a young man who it was his first time. He was actually a CRC kid, and it was his first time getting in the pool. He was very nervous. He got in the pool. The instructor's telling him, okay, let's hold on to the wall. They're putting their face in, and he's like terrified. You could tell he was frazzled and really was not liking it. And so she had him calm down, breathe a little bit, made sure that he felt comfortable, kind of soothed him a little bit. And then by the end of the lesson, you could tell he was feeling, his body was just much, much more relaxed. So having that extra like one-on-one is really, really helpful to them.
Yeah, so we don't have anyone trained in our facility for special needs specifically. But I will say, there's so much neurodivergency being diagnosed these days, and a lot of them are at a fairly high level, right? So you really don't need to have them necessarily in a special needs program for some of these neurodivergent things that they're struggling with. Water sensitivity can be a big one, right? Because anyone who has sensory processing could be a sensory seeker, where they just want to get in nonstop, or they can be sensory avoidant, where they don't want to drop a water on their face. So what we're able to do, because our Learn to Swim lessons are just a 2-to-1 ratio, they're basically all semi-private, we're able to customize the lesson for the child. And we believe strongly in structure. So all of our teachers teach exactly the same way. And that is hugely relaxing for a child to know that every time they get in the pool, it's going to be this, then this, then this, then this. They feel confident. They know what's going to happen. Even if they're a little nervous about it, let's say they're practicing going under, you've made that deal with them. It's only twice. We're only going to do it once in the beginning of class, once at the end of class. Like, all right, I could survive it. We give bathtub homework to the parents to do at home. You're only at a pool a lot of times once a week. There's things that you can do at home to expose them. Practice putting your face in that bathtub. Avoid the shower, get in the tub a couple times a week and practice putting that face in the water, pouring water over the head, giving prizes for that. That's hugely, hugely helpful.
Right.
When we have a student who has impulse control and can't sit and wait their turn for that, then we'll suggest a private lesson. But again, it becomes so cost prohibitive. We do have a lot of families who are taking advantage of getting swimming lessons paid for through their special services programs. So that's something I recommend parents do look into, is to see what your special services programs will provide, whether it's through your medical insurance. Sometimes you can put it down as a therapy. It just depends on your insurance. And there are some programs out there who work with insurance companies. We don't in particular, but I do know that there's some companies out there and some companies that are specifically for a special needs program. Angelfish is one of them who works with special needs children, and they also have a PT program that they work with students for. So there are spaces out there. There's not enough of them, but there are some, and so you have to just look around and advocate for that.
So can one of you just touch on, and I'm not even sure what the right term is, but when a child, is it called silent drowning or the after drowning, like when you get water in your lungs and it's later that night?
Yeah, so that was big in the news a few years ago. Dry drowning.
Dry drowning.
Yeah, it's often called dry drowning. So, if you have a kid who's in the water for hours and, they're playing and they're just, not always super mindful of how their body feels, and maybe they've gone under, and we've all had that moment when we were swimming and you stayed under too long, or somebody pushed you under, a friend pushed you under, and was, you had that where you aspirated some water. So you inhaled some water. So you get it in your lungs, right? So you have to have a certain amount of water in your lungs in order to have this dry drowning experience. Right. So it's repeated. It's not going to happen in a swimming lesson that you're in 30 minutes if you're, being assisted submerged or putting your face in. Even if a child comes up coughing after one of those, going under the water events, that's an isolated incident, and it's not going to really cause a dry drowning. But if you were with an instructor who was, let's say, doing drown proofing, and maybe we're not so, good at it, because, I've a lot of people talk about, drown proofing, and I have seen it be successful. But I've also seen it being very traumatic. It's a very controversial thing. Right. We don't believe in it. We do believe in teaching children how to roll onto their back, but never in a panicked, forced situation. Right. I've had some clients come to me after they've drown-proofed their kids, and they're like, saved my kid's life, best thing I ever did. Like, I have a backyard pool. I don't want to be worried about it. Now teach them to swim normally. But I know that if they fall in the pool, they'll flip on the back. And can you keep practicing that? And the kid already knows how to do it, and they've been through it. So we, of course, say, yeah, roll on your back. And they roll on their back. And so you keep that going. But then you learn, the traditional way. But I've had kids come to us after that being terrified. It didn't work. But in those situations, they do keep the child face down. They do this in a method, right? And if it's done correctly, it shouldn't happen. But when it's not done perfectly correctly, the child does have to stay there after they've been taught and they're practicing in increments. They have to stay there till they panic, right? And then flip on their own. So in that process, you can inhale water. And if you're doing just that for 30 minutes, that could come into play in those situations. Again, I'm not...
But that's why we teach to blow bubbles, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a controversy on blowing bubbles, right? So American Red Cross is all about blowing bubbles, right? And a lot of their programming is for school-age children. So infants, you can't teach to blow bubbles, right? So you're not teaching a baby to blow bubbles. They won't understand, and they
That is a very good point.
They don't know how to do it, right? So up until the age of really 4, it's a very hard concept to understand to blow your air out. Once you blow your air out under the water, what do you need to do? Instinctively, you have to breathe. Yeah. So if you blow your air out underwater and you're underwater, guess what? You're going to inhale the water. So we don't actually teach our kids to blow bubbles until they're learning strokes.
Right.
So, that's one of the big differences in my program is that I want you to hold your breath. Hold it for as long as you can and get to safety.
Right.
So
makes sense. It makes sense. I never really thought, because you can't tell a 6-8 month old blow bubble.
You can't. Right.
Not.
And it's instinctive, right? Because of the instincts in the womb, when you take a young child under the water, they won't breathe. You can't keep them under there, but you're just down and up, right? And they won't breathe. It's instinctive. And that goes away around 2.5, that instinct. And then they can panic and, get a startle effect when they go under the water and inhale the water. But for the most part, that's going to be, like I said, an isolated. If you're in a good program, it's going to be like, you might see your kid cough. It doesn't mean they're going to have dry drowning. There's mostly no risk. But special needs kids also fall victim to this a lot, too, because they don't recognize, I'm sure you remember swimming all day long and you had a hard time breathing at the end of the night, right? Like your parent would say, you're waterlogged. Right. You're waterlogged.
Right.
But you probably had little inhales that made you a little fatigued, but nothing risking you dying, right? But if you're special needs, you may not have the ability to recognize, I should get out, I should take a break, I should rest, I don't feel good.
And you should have kids do that, right? Like after a certain amount, just for exhaustion.
Yes.
Like
Taking breaks, definitely.
100%. Because even a swimmer can get into trouble, right? You should also teach your kids who know how to swim, keep them practicing getting on your back. Like, go over, what do you do? Go, every time you go to a new pool or beach or something, especially pools, you want to say, this is where the deep end is. This is where the drop-off happens. A lot of times people think, if I put my kid in, even if they can't swim, if I put them in the shallow end, they're safe, right? They can stand. They're good. That's not true. No. And a lot of times that will happen where they creep closer and closer to where the slope is. They don't know where that slope is because nobody ever said, your parents just like, stay over here.
Right, like just stay on the stairs.
Stay on the
Don't
stairs.
leave the stairs.
Don't leave this area.
They jump from 1 stair to 3 stairs.
Right. And then next thing you know, they go to put their foot down and they have that sinking feeling and they don't know what to do. Practice that with them. Take your kid over to where the slope happens and say, okay, mom's going to, because they know how to swim, right? But mom's going to push you over a little bit and then I want you to swim back to where it's shallow. Right? Teach them, I lost my footing. That's the way I got to go to get back to safety. All these little things, and in oceans, don't ever leave your kid's side, even in the break, like you just never know when that rogue wave is coming. You should have your hands on your kids at all time. Even, I have, a 17 and a 20-year-old. I'm down in the break. I don't want to be, but they're out there. So that's where I am because the lifeguard's looking at a sea of people.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You could at least say, hello, one of my kids is missing. And that's, the really important thing. The quicker you can get a lifeguard, and just don't swim where there are no lifeguards. Just don't do it.
Right.
It's not worth it. It's not worth the risk of your child. Don't do it. You need somebody who's certified to get out there in the waves and has the equipment that they need to keep everyone safe. So
I think you just touched on something that's so important. Like, even though there are lifeguards there, you're still responsible for
100%
watching. It's a one-on-one situation.
Yep.
So you can alert the lifeguard that you have someone who needs help, but they can't possibly watch everyone at once.
Don't go to the town pool and be like, see you later, kids.
Right.
Go get in the water,
That's
sit on
true.
the side, watch your kids. We heard of a tragic event where a child went on vacation, did not know how to swim yet, but was in swimming lessons, went on vacation to Hawaii, and the mom and the friend were in the water in the shallow end, and the child was going up and down a slide that went into water he could stand in and just kept repeating that. Was having the time of his life. And the mom, was like, I'm going to go over to the bench, to lie down for a little bit. And the friend was like, yeah, I'll watch him, no problem. And then she was like, okay, let's switch. And in the time it took for the friend who got out to go tell the mom, let's switch, and for the mom to go back over, they lost sight of the child. They were like, where is he? Where'd he go? And then you start looking everywhere, and this child had just slipped into that deep end and was found floating face down in the deep end with people around him.
Oh my gosh.
Nobody noticed. It was
'Cause it's
silent. They
silent.
thought, and even kids sometimes they play. You know, they
Yeah.
go face down and they play,
Yeah.
and then they're like, you know, you think that they're playing. They're not watching this kid. They don't
Right.
know who he is.
Right.
They don't know. And
It's horrible.
and unfortunately, he passed away, and it was on his 5th birthday, and it's just a horrific. It was 10 seconds.
They always
that
say that most accidents happen when like mom, dad, and another caregiver are there, and everybody
Yeah.
thinks somebody else is watching the
100%.
kid.
And that's why we say, you know, there's a few nonprofits we've had a family come to us who had a child drown and came to us after that. And she created, I think it's called Savannah Smiles. And she started a whole thing with having a water watcher. And she comes by every year and hands us a bunch of tags where you literally put the tag on somebody, like, you're the water watcher now. So it's like very specifically designed. You are in charge. You know, my sister and I own Swim Tank together, and we both have pools in our yard. And when we have friends over, we always are like, who's watching the pool? Like, because we've experienced this firsthand. Your friends come over, their kids are new swimmers, or they think they can swim, or they think they're staying in the shallow end. Our pools only go to 5 feet, but that's still deep for a little one.
Right.
And you're chatting, and, you know, both of us have had to jump in our own pools to save that child who's gotten into trouble. You know, we know the signs, we know what to look for, and we're hyper aware. But the parent was right there on the pool deck
Right.
and never heard because it's silent, or all the kids are screaming and you can't hear them.
Right.
Or
it's
didn't
so
know what to
loud,
look
so
for.
much fun.
Yeah, right. So, you know, these are the things you can't take it for granted. You have to, you know. And the other thing, you know, which a lot of people don't think about, but if you go on vacation, right, a lot of times these houses have pools that are right out of a back door.
Right.
They're not individually fenced. Like, the whole property's fenced, but they're not
Right.
individually
It's
fenced.
party.
Right?
Like the kitchen opens up into it.
Right. And
Right.
that's actually how Savannah did pass away. Her family was on a vacation. They rented a house. And next thing they know, they were making dinner, and the wife thought the husband, you know, had the 2-year-old, and the husband thought the wife had the 2-year-old. And there was no alarm beeping on that back door. And, you know, the next thing they knew, she was gone in the pool because she had spent the whole day out there. It was so fun.
Right.
It was such a fun
Right.
place.
Swim right back out there, yeah.
So supervision, swimming lessons, barriers, you know, no CPR, you know, these are all the things that we need to repeat ad nauseum and educate people on to end these drowning statistics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. No, the water's a scary thing.
It's scary. And what's sad is that it can be so much fun.
So
But
much fun. There's
it
so
has
many
to be taken
amazing
seriously.
water activities that you can do, not just from swimming or boating, but to, you know, kids just even want to go in the rivers around here just to find little creatures
Yeah, if
or
you're going
whatever.
fishing, right? Like, you're right by water. You know, fishing can be a dangerous activity.
Right.
But here we have so much access, right?
So
like,
much.
We're waterfront city
kids
here.
I mean, it's
can-
right here. It's our park.
Right.
You know, we have a
Boating,
harbor island.
kayaking, you know, everything. It is our
And so
playground
many people
here.
live on the waterfront.
Yes.
too.
Yes.
And
exactly.
swim is more than a sport; it's a survival tool.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great
It's
point.
it's a
not
life
just
skill
a sport,
that everyone
like-
should have. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. It's like learning how to ride a bike. You know, it
Yes.
should be a rite of passage. You know.
should be.
Right.
It just you gotta
It's more important
prioritize
than
it.
learning to ride a bike.
100%.
You'll survive without knowing how to ride a
Those
bike.
things you think of, like, you know, that
I know,
you
but
do
it
growing
is.
up, right?
Yeah.
You're going to learn how to ride a bike at some point, right? Like, you should
It should be one of
prioritize.
those.
Yeah. I saw something cute the other day. I can't remember who was promoting it. I think the National Alliance for Drowning Prevention was promoting it, but they were doing make swimming your child's first sport. And they're trying to promote it in that way. Like, make it your kid's first sport, because it's the most important thing that
Right.
they can really do.
Right.
Forget ballet and music class
Well,
and soccer.
right.
Don't forget them forever, but just
But
prioritize,
prioritize
you know,
swimming.
what's
No,
gonna
but it
save your
is.
kid's
Those
life.
are, and you know, I talk about that a lot. Like, what are life sports that you'll play for the rest of your life? Like swimming, you will swim for the rest of your life. You're not going to necessarily do ballet or play lacrosse for
Right.
the rest of your life.
Right, exactly. And it's great because it's non-impact, right? So if you think
Right.
about it as a long-term sport for yourself, you can swim lessons, in your hundreds. Like you get in,
Right.
you're
That's
weightless,
true.
and
Yes.
you can. It's
Right.
a great form of exercise. It's not
And
going to cause
therapy,
injury
right.
or any kind of things to you. So
It's actually very therapeutic.
yeah, it's very therapeutic. Yeah, there's being studies being done with ADHD, how it helps kids with ADHD, calm, something about the water, and having that sensory input all over can be really helpful for kids with that. So it's got benefits, a lot of benefits, and it's great that Kathy Hochul is prioritizing swimming in New York. She started that initiative last year, New York Swims, and she's putting millions into infrastructure, trying to get pools back into neighborhoods that don't have pools,
Right.
and trying to offer vouchers for swimming lessons for people who can't afford it, which is a great initiative of hers. So we couldn't be happier to be working with New York State in all of this.
That's great.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, I'm going to let each of you just say a little something about your program, and maybe just working with CRC with your program.
Sure. I'll go first.
Go ahead.
We have our aquatics program. So we have a learn to swim program. Our aquatics department is kind of big, I guess I should say. So we have our learn to swim program, which is for ages 4 all the way up until we say 99, but could be 100, could be more than that. We also have lap swim for adults during the week. We have family swim on the weekends. We have a swim team as well. And partnering with CRC, I think we've been able to expand our reach, right? Water safety awareness, be able to help all of the kids who are coming to us with this scholarship, get them the free goggles, get them the free swim cap, get them this life skill, get them to, I've seen kids who have personally gone from level 1 and now are level 2 or level 3 actually in this short time span that we've had this program. So we're very happy to be partnering with you guys.
Thank you.
So we are basically just children focused. So at Swim Tank, we teach kids ages 4 months up to about 13, 14. It's kind of when we age out. Most kids who know how to swim by then are moving on to swim team and things like that. So we're trying to get you to get those basic skills and get you out the door to something else if you want to continue swimming. But we just are so excited to work with you guys with this grant. There's nothing more exciting than being able to help a child who would not normally have access to this kind of a program. And our instructors, they know we're doing this, and they feel great being a part of it. And it's just great to give back, right? I've been doing this for so many years. And I remember, when I was in the water every day, we have these little badge systems that we give out. You can start at a clam and you go all the way up to a great white shark. So you earn all these badges along the way. And every time you give these kids one of these badges, and they've worked so hard and they've had to wait and they've, come every week, and then they get that badge and their face lights up. It's like, it's a sense of self-confidence you're giving them. You're teaching them to work hard. You're teaching them to never give up. There's so much beyond just learning to swim that you're giving these kids. We recently had a parent who ended, I think, a decade of swimming lessons with us, for her child got up to that great white shark, and she wrote the most beautiful letter to us all about the life skills beyond swimming that her child had learned through this. The water can teach you so much.
Right.
So it's just amazing to be able to help the community stop these drownings from happening.
Yes.
Awareness for everybody. We send out reminders to family, come up with a water safety plan for your family. Talk to each other. What's your plan going to be when you go to the pool? What's your plan going to be when you go to the beach? What's your plan when you're leaving your kid with a sitter if there are water dangers around you, right?
Right.
Like, what's the plan if there is a flood, right?
Right.
Do we have life jackets in the house? Like, what's our emergency escape plan? Like, going over all of those things are so important. And to be able, we hope we can do more with the community center, like it's amazing. We did some lessons with you guys over the summer before you got the grant, where we were able to, in our downtimes, be able to give free lessons. We'd love to still do that when we have downtime. But the fact that you guys went out of your way to do this and find this grant, I mean, kudos to you, because you guys are really facilitating, companies like ours to be able to be a part of this process without it hurting, our businesses or having to be too much of an effect on us. So you guys really get a huge amount of the credit for this, for advocating, and the program that's offering this, right?
Right. I mean, we can't thank LISCAF and Restore American Estuaries enough.
Amazing.
They've been great to us. They've been amazing.
Yeah.
They actually, I will tell this, when they came to us about the grant in the waterways, I was like, well, what are we going to do? And then we brainstormed it with them, and Long Island Sound Community Fund actually was the ones who were like, you're all surrounded by water and you just had a flood. And I was like, we need to teach these people to swim.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. And that's when, I will say it was challenging finding a pool, but we found you guys, and we're so excited and thrilled to have LISCAF and, Restore American Estuaries, funding this program and
Amazing.
Just bringing this awareness to a community surrounded by water. I mean, Community Resource Center serves all of the Sound Shore area, and just the fact that we have something that's called the Sound Shore area makes you realize there's such a need to get people the
Agreed.
skill of swimming.
Yes. Yeah.
We actually, I don't know if you all know the history of Carver Center, but we were founded in 1943, so we've been in service for about over 80 years. But we had a small office in the Portchester YMCA, and the Portchester YMCA actually went bankrupt, and then we bought the building. So we kind of came upon aquatics and absorbed it. So it's so funny that now we're able to be here and give back to the community, and having a very similar community to CRC's.
Right.
Yeah. It's
All
fantastic.
the waterways and rivers and
We're a waterfront city in Portchester.
right. The river runs right through.
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Where can the listener find more information about your program?
I think we both have websites, right? So we're swimtank.net, and
we're carvercenter.org, and you can always call our welcome center, 914-305-6009.
We're better with you emailing info@swimtank.net. I won't lie. The phones can be iffy over there.
And I will say, we do have over 100 people on a wait list, right? For swim lessons?
Yes,
we do have a big wait list at CRC, but we do encourage people to reach out to CRC and get your name on that list so that we can get you, hopefully in one of these programs down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to have you.
It's so important. I just want to take a minute and thank LMC, too, for having us all and having us highlight water safety. I don't know if you guys have one last just little pitch on water safety and how important it is.
Just that it's never too late to learn, right, in life.
Agreed.
Just get in the water, try your best to overcome whatever fear you may have, and if you have a child, please enroll them in swimming lessons. It's the most important thing that you could do for them, so that it's preventable, right?
Agreed. Yep. 88% reduction in your child's risk of drowning. And it's the #1 cause of death for all children ages 1 to 5. Second leading cause of accidental death for kids aged 2 to 15. So don't think it can't happen to you. It can happen to any of us.
That's the number that's shocking, the 2 to 15 number that people don't realize. You always think it's because you always hear about the little child in the bucket.
Yeah.
They can drown in a bucket. So you think once you're past that point and they're walking and stable, it's okay, but it's not the truth.
It's not the truth. No, definitely not. So don't take it lightly and spread the word. If you listen to this podcast, tell everyone you know, did you listen to this podcast? And this is what I heard, that's how we're going to do it. It needs to become viral. I know, social media. I'm waiting for my commercial. We'll see what happens. We'll see if we can get New York State to put out a PSA commercial about drowning. So that would be amazing if we could get that. The Navy did one once. It's a great commercial. It's an older child too. It seems like on a field trip where all the kids are playing and he just loses his footing, and
That's interesting that the Navy did
The
it.
Navy did, yeah, which is great. But, you think all of these institutions, like the only drowning commercial I've ever seen is the
Right.
Navy.
Right.
And it was about kids, So hopefully New York State will step up and give us a commercial.
Because they do, and I mean,
They're doing a lot.
kudos to you for getting the video to everybody after
Yes.
giving birth in the hospital, and they
Yeah,
make you watch
so-
this video. But you're so overwhelmed. Also, you have this newborn that,
Yeah.
are you really paying attention to this
Right.
video and taking in?
Right. Yeah.
What's being
We're
said.
hoping it starts the conversation, right?
Right.
And gets
Right.
in at ground zero, and then hopefully then pediatricians follow up and say, hey, do you know that drowning is the number one risk to your child? Not
Right.
rolling off the changing table, and all the other things
Right,
that go off,
right,
they
right.
go over. So yeah, there's hope. There's big hope, and New York State is taking it seriously, which I can't thank them enough for. But we all have to do our part, and you
Yes.
guys are doing a huge part.
Yes.
And we thank you for it.
Well, thank you. We couldn't do it
Thank
without
you.
you guys. So thank you so much to Swim Tank, Carver Center, Restore American Estuaries, and
LMC.
for having us today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.